Ooh, ooh, that's good. So glad that I may or may not let this become my entire personality. Not no, but hell no. Oh God, it's so good. Well, hello friends, and welcome back, or welcome for the first time if you are new here. My name is Lori Beth, and today we are going to go over my April reading wrap-up. So all of the books that I read in April, which was 8 books in total, I believe. We are going to talk about each one of those books in a little bit of detail, my final thoughts and opinions on the book, and then what I rated that book as well. So without further ado, I think we should just jump right in. So the first book that I read in the month of April was The Crimson Moth by Kristen Ciccarelli. This is a YA fantasy novel that also has kind of a love triangle subplot as well. In this book, we follow our main character, whose name is Rune, and she is a witch in hiding and also kind of like a vigilante for witches as well, because in this world that Rune lives in, it is illegal to be a witch. So basically there was this big revolution of sorts where the non-witch people, so just your normal person, revolted against witches being part of this world and basically purged as many witches as they could, and they continue to make it illegal to be a witch. Therefore, if you are found out about being a witch, you will be arrested and also sent to a purging. So it is still practiced to get rid of witches in general. Our main character does not realize she is a witch until she kind of comes of age, when she starts her first menstrual cycle, and then she notices from that she is definitely different and definitely carries the genes of her grandmother in being a witch. Along with this, she decides to fight for kind of saving witches, and again, being that vigilante that kind of goes undercover and hides herself as the Crimson Moth, who basically breaks a bunch of witches out from being captured and releases them so that they can go on and try to like run away and live their lives in peace. And along the way, she starts to form this romance with the captain of the guard so she can try to get intel on where all of these witches are being held. Of course, the captain of the guard, whose main job is to hunt witches and purge witches from this world, starts to kind of develop this relationship with our main character, who he has thoughts of her maybe being a witch, but isn't quite sure. And along with that, his brother is kind of in the middle of them and also develops feelings for our main character as well. So it kind of ends up being like this weird enemies to lovers thing, but also like friends to lovers, like love triangle that ends up happening as well. It was a really good book. I did really like it. I thought that there was definitely some plot holes and maybe not the best writing I have ever read. I did end up giving this a 3.5-star rating. So I really enjoyed it. I just didn't love it. It wasn't like the best writing I had ever experienced. So one of the things that I did really enjoy about this book was the magic itself. So all of the witches in this story are women, and in order for them to do magic or spells or incantations, they have to use blood, either their own or blood from someone else. And to do this, they would usually cut themselves in certain designs, and it would leave scars all over their bodies. And that's how they would be kind of found out if they were witches or not. So people would look for scarring on women and then determine whether or not they were a witch. Because our main character is in hiding, she doesn't want to leave any scars on her body, so she uses her menstrual blood to try to learn how to manage her magic along the story. And I thought that was really cool. I thought it was just like very openly talked about. You know, we're kind of stepping out of that era of like women having menstrual cycles being an ick thing. It's just part of who we are. And not only was it just part of who these women were in this book, our main character used it to be powerful. And I thought that was a really cool message to kind of be put out there in this book. And it was good. It was fine. So I did do a vlog on this book as well. So if you want like a really in-depth thoughts and feelings as I was reading it, I will link that down below. Otherwise, it was just okay. I liked it. I didn't hate it. Was it the best thing I ever read? No. I do believe this is a duology, and will I continue this series? I want to say yes at this point in time. I will say the book did end a little differently than I thought it would. So I guess I kind of want to see what happens. I don't know. TBD on this. 3.5 stars. Thought it was good. Would definitely recommend if you like a witchy vibe. It could be a really good fall read as well. Next up on my list is A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. This is the first book in a trilogy called the Darker Shades Trilogy. And this is one of my favorite books of all time. I said it. And can you guess what I rated it? 5 stars. I don't know if there's much of V.E. Schwab that I have rated less than 4 stars, so it's really no surprise that this was a full 5 stars. This was a reread for me. I started this a couple of years ago, read it, really enjoyed it, and then kind of put it down. I never finished the series. And I just wasn't in a fantasy vibe at the time. I just couldn't comprehend fantasy. So I decided I'm going to reread this entire series from start to finish because I never technically finished it, and I am not sorry that I spent my time doing this because this is such a fantastic fantasy series. If you like a little dark, a little moody, atmospheric, true magic, like so much magic. Magic is one of the main parts of this book. You like morally gray characters, if you like adventure, this is the series for you. So just a quick recap. I'm not going to go into too much detail because I do have 3 entire reading vlogs on me going through this entire series, which I will also link down below as well. So I'm just going to give a brief description for anybody that has not heard of the series or read the series. This follows our 2 main characters, Kel, who is an Antari, and Delilah, who is a thief. They technically reside in 2 different Londons because in this world there are 3 Londons, red, white, and gray, and there used to be a London called Black London that succumbed to magic and basically crumbled because of the powerful magic that it contained. So Kel is a very specific type of magician where he is one of 2 in the whole world left called Antari that are still able to travel through these parallel Londons. And in doing so, he ends up running into our main character, our other main character, Delilah, and they go on these crazy adventures together over the course of 3 books and of course develop a very delicious slow burn romance that might be one of my favorite book couples of all time. I can't describe to you the tension that comes from these 2. Oh God, it's so good. And not just that, over the course of the series, you are introduced to multiple characters, and by the last book, so the 3rd book, you feel like you really know these people, you know these characters, and you get to see them grow and really kind of hone in on who they are meant to be and who they really are. And that to me is just so satisfactory in a series to see these characters come to fruition of their full potential. And V.E. Schwab writes it so well. And again, it's very atmospheric. It's got kind of this gritty, dark, you're thinking that London setting, very smoggy, and some really evil, diabolical characters as well. So if you like a little bit of a darker fantasy with a lot of magic and again, a really good slow burn romance, this is definitely the series for you. 5-star read for me. So glad that I went back through this book again. So glad that I may or may not let this become my entire personality. Moving on. And next up, I read Heart of the Sun Warrior by Su Lin Tan. This is the 2nd book to Daughter of the Moon Goddess and the last and final book in this duology. In this series, we follow our main character, Xing Yin, who is the daughter of the moon goddess and has basically spent her whole life secluded on the moon, not knowing that she was not even known about by anybody else in the celestial kingdom and that her mother was actually a prisoner on the moon. When a celestial empress comes to visit them, she flees the moon so that she can stay hidden in secrecy and finds herself in the celestial kingdom, kind of ensuing on all of these adventures to eventually free her mother from being a prisoner on the moon. This is a beautifully poetic story that mixes Chinese mythology and romance and adventure all into one. It is so lovely. Like the writing is very lyrical, very poetic, and very, very descriptive. I think I rated the first book like 4 or 4.5 stars. This one I rated 3.5 stars, so not quite as high, but I did really enjoy it. I just felt like it was a little drawn out. So I started to feel like the main character, her moral compass was so strong and so good that she was almost a little annoying. I don't know if that's the right word, but it was like she would always, always, always just like try to make the right choice. And she usually did. And then it kind of just like, I don't know, it started to irk you at some point because it started to make you feel like, well, that's just not how we function usually as people. Like we make mistakes and we make wrong choices and we do things because our hearts have led them to do them and our mind didn't like take over when it should have. So I felt like it was just very much almost like overplayed, of her being like, oh, no, like I can't do that because like this is the right thing to do. I don't know. I'm not explaining it well, but basically what I'm trying to say is it felt like most of the book was just her faced with choices and her always making the right choice because of like she knew what was right. And it started to make her feel a little unrealistic because again, I don't think that we do that in our day-to-day lives. We don't always just like make the right choices all the time. In fact, we make a lot of wrong choices and we have to learn from them. So that started to make her feel like a little bit untouchable, and I didn't necessarily love that. The story itself was really beautiful and really lovely and ended in a very satisfactory way. And if you like a very descriptive, kind of dense book, this is a great series for you. It's something that you can truly get lost in. I will say that much. Like when I would pick this book up and start reading, I would just kind of forget that I was reading because the author had a really good way of kind of like immersing you into the story and you would just kind of lose track of time while reading it. So I will say that it is written very, very beautifully. But for me, this one was a 3.5 star. Ooh, that's good. I have a caffeine problem. And moving on to the next thing that I read in the month of April, which was A Gathering of Shadows, the second book in the Darker Shades trilogy. This was a super fun book. I did rate it 4.5 stars, so not quite as high as the first book. It's that middle book, right? Like stuff has to happen, so there's a lot of time building the characters, which is good. You also kind of like, for me personally, I don't love it when an author like rushes through character development because I really do like character-driven books. I get very emotionally invested in my characters and I do always appreciate when an author takes time to do it. I just didn't love it as much as the first one. That's just what I'm gonna say about it. However, the story in this book was just so fun because it included a magical tournament, which is just one of my favorite things to read about. I read at the end of 2023, like 2 other books that had tournaments involved. And at first I was like, nope. Because I'll say it, Hunger Games. Like I loved the Hunger Games and it's hard for me to sometimes get that vision out of my head when I'm reading a similar trope. And it's been a while since I've let myself go there. And I'm glad that I have kind of stepped back into it because yes, of course, some of these books about tournaments and trials are going to be somewhat similar, but this one just felt so much different because again, it was the magic. V.E. Schwab writes magic so well. So in this tournament, all of the top magicians from each region come to compete for the best magician in the world, basically. So you have magicians coming to showcase how they can use magic and how they can use magic to defeat a competitor. Everybody in this story has some form of elemental magic. Some people have more than one, but most people usually just have one. So we're talking earth, wind, fire, water, and then some people can do like bones and spirit. Like bones and spirit are kind of like the same thing. But it was really very interesting to watch how they could manipulate elements. And that is one of my favorite types of magic in books, elemental magic. So now you get this entire tournament of very, very talented magicians using magic in ways that you kind of never really thought about, like how they would manipulate elements from the earth to fight each other. And it was beautiful. It was written so, so well. And also there was kind of like this subplot of the book in the background happening. So we had a character from book 1 who was kind of dark, kind of evil, and he had all of these plans kind of cooking in the background. And it was a really interesting blend of like some action happening in the forefront, and then every once in a while you would get a POV from this other character, and you'd be like, oh crap, I totally forgot he was over here like doing all these things and kind of like making all these plans. So it really kind of like pushed the book in this really cool direction, like it was pushing the series in a very cool direction. And I kind of liked the blend of, as the reader, almost getting lost in the tournament myself, just like the people of London. So like everybody was kind of involved in this tournament, and it's very fun and very big and exciting for London, that everybody was also forgetting what was happening like over here with this guy. And I don't know, it was just really cool. So then it made it kind of like this really big build up of you would, as the reader, were reminded that these things were happening, and you were like, oh my God, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen, and they don't know what's gonna happen. Like, so I don't know. I really liked it. Again, 4.5 stars, still super, super high rating. Didn't love it necessarily as much as the first one, but did really like it. And I liked the development that I got to see out of the characters that kind of set them up for the last and final book. So next up in the month, I read Sweet Bean Paste by Durian Sakagawa. This is a Japanese novel translated into English, and I rated this 4 stars. As you can see, this is just a little guy, and it was one of those books that packed a punch for me, even though it was just over 200 pages. So in this story, we follow our main character, Sentaro, who is running this small confectionery shop where he makes pancakes. And he is kind of just a very lonely, lost person who is in this situation to pay off debt for some crimes that he had committed in the past. And he is kind of just that guy that wakes up every day, clocks in, goes through the motions, goes home, drinks a little too much, goes to bed, does it all over again the next day. So over time, Sentaro notices that there's this older woman who starts to kind of stand around outside the shop, and eventually she comes in and approaches him about working at the shop. As she does this, he notices that she has very disfigured hands. One side of her face is kind of droopy or maybe frozen in place. So it is very apparent to him that she has probably had some sort of medical issues in the past that have left her with these very visible ailments. Because of this, and because they are serving the public, he tells her no, that she can't work there, and he's kind of a jerk about it at first, and then she keeps coming back and keeps prompting to work there. Eventually, Sentaro gives in, and then very quickly realizes that she is amazing at making this sweet bean paste. And along with this sweet bean paste, more customers start to come in, sales go up, so he's starting to see this benefit of hiring her. Because of her very visible disfigurements with her hands, the owner of the shop does not want her working there, and it kind of starts to turn into this very like poignant, heartfelt story about discrimination and also building friendships and Japanese culture and what food can do for comfort and healing, all wrapped up into this tiny 200-page novel. But with that being said, I like that I can read some of these smaller novels and they are still, again, packing that punch and leaving me with a lot of thoughts, a lot of feelings, and kind of just being very contemplative, like really realizing some of these themes in the books are there to make us realize like we can be really down and out, we can have lives that we think are going nowhere, and then suddenly someone comes into them and reminds us what we can live for, or we can really fall into something like making food and feel very comforted and kind of use that to heal some issues from our past. So again, there's a lot of very heavy topics that can be covered in these small books, and I just really love the feeling that they leave me with, and I just truly enjoyed this one. So 4 stars for me. Okay, so after that, I read The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. This was one of my most anticipated reads of the year because Leigh Bardugo is probably my favorite author of all time. Again, if you are not new here, you've heard me endlessly talk about how obsessed I am with her. And for me, I rated this book 4.5 stars. So really high up there, really good rating. Not my favorite book I've ever read by her, but still 4.5 stars is very, very good. This is her first historical fantasy novel, and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. It had the very classic Leigh Bardugo vibe to it of being kind of dark, kind of moody, a little gritty. It would be a very, very good fall read. In fact, I've said this in a vlog that I've done of this book, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. I think I might even do a reread of this book in the fall because it really just gave off those vibes. So in this book, we follow our main character, Lucia, who is able to perform magic or little acts of miracle. She is, quote unquote, God blessed is what they call them. And one day the mistress of the house that she works for discovers that she can do these little miracles. She starts to use Lucia to garner some attention for their household and their family and to try to move them up in the ranks of society of this world. So this is set in the golden age of Spain. So we are talking Spanish Inquisition time. We are talking women that do not have any rights whatsoever. And also this is very heavily toned about religion and religious persecution as well. So at this time, it was very much not allowed to be any other religion besides the religion of the crown. And Lucia is also hiding the fact that she is of Jewish descent. So we have this whole story that covers some very heavy topics like religious persecution, sexism, racism, all wrapped up into like this fantasy magical aspect that made it really, really like intriguing and kept me very drawn in the whole time. So I do like historical settings. I like a period book. I also really love fantasy. And in my vlog for this book, I went into a lot of detail about how I thought Leigh Bardugo really was able to use the fantasy setting of this book to talk about some of these very heavy topics and all those very not pretty aspects of history. And I just truly enjoyed it. Again, I thought it was very vibey. I loved the description of the settings that they were in. She talked about the weather a couple of times, so it was kind of taking place in fall in Spain, and you could just kind of very clearly see the setting that she was writing about. And I really enjoyed it. I liked the historical aspect of the book. I was very pleased with what she did with it. So again, 4.5 star read for me. I really loved this one. So happy that she kind of went into this historical route. All right, and next I read A Tempest of Tea by Hafsa Faizal, and I don't know what to say about this book besides I didn't really like it. And I'm really sad about that. I'm really upset that I didn't enjoy this book because it sounded right up my alley. So first of all, I rated it 2.5 stars, which is the lowest rated book I have given in a very long time. Another fun fact, this year in 2024, I don't know what has happened to me. I keep talking about all these new leaves that I've turned as a reader in 2024. I'm also just being much different about the way I rate books these days. And I think it's because I am putting my thoughts and opinions out there even more and more than I used to. I want to give very thorough thoughts and feelings on books. And my very thorough thought and feeling on this book was it wasn't really good, 2.5 stars. I just felt like it lacked a lot of depth. So in this book, we follow our main character, Arthi, who runs this tea shop with her best friend, who's kind of like her brother, almost like her adopted brother. And this is a tea shop by day, and by night, it actually is another kind of shop for vampires, because in this world that they live in, there are vampires that exist, and they exist among people, and a very modern type of vampire, which I do kind of like. So they walk among people, and you would really have a hard time telling the difference between just your normal human and a vampire, and also half humans exist in this world as well. So basically, once nightfall happens, these vampires come in to their tea shop and they are serviced with blood and people that give themselves up for their own blood to be used, and it's kind of like not fully accepted. They do this like as a speakeasy operation, and it's kind of like on the down low. And everybody around kind of knows that like this is what's going on there, but nothing has ever really happened until now, where the shop is basically being shut down and Arthi and her little ragtag crew of friends is going to fight to keep the shop open. So they have to go on this adventure to stop the shop from being closed. I, in theory, loved everything about this book. It has vampires. It has kind of that Six of Crows element to it, where you've got like this group of young adult people that are gonna go fight for what they want. But it just lacked I don't know, it lacked everything for me. I just thought it was very surface level. I didn't feel connected to any of the characters whatsoever. I thought it was really weird also that this story was supposed to be about their tea shop, and it's like this thing that's so important. It's their world. It's their living. It's their everyday lives, and it's kind of being threatened. So they're like, you know what? We're just gonna close it. We're gonna close it, and we're gonna like go over here and like do all these like adventure-y things and try to get to like the end goal of like saving it. But in the meantime, we're just gonna like close it. It's fine. And I'm like, isn't it like super important to you though? Like you can just like shut the doors and take care of all this other stuff. I don't know. There was something amiss in this book. I can't quite put my finger on it. I don't know if I've never read anything by this author. Maybe it was just her writing style. I'm really bummed that I didn't love this one. It's a really pretty book, but will I recommend it to people? Not no, but hell no. Sorry. It's just, I don't know. Wasn't for me. And last but not least, in the month of April, I read This is Amiko, Do You Copy by Natsuko Imamura. First of all, can we talk about this cover? Because how cool is that? Secondly, it's just another little baby. Just another little translated novel. So as stated on the cover, we follow our main character, Amiko, who is this very young girl, kind of just taking us through what's going on in her life. And it's very apparent that she struggles with something, whether she is kind of ADHD or she might be on the spectrum of some sort. She does not seem to comprehend things the way that the rest of us do. It makes her social awareness much different than your average child, but at the same time, it makes her a very genuine character. So we see her go through these things happening in her life. So she's very disconnected from both of her parents. Her mother just has never really formed a close relationship with her, and her father is always just kind of like there in the background and never really like proactive in things. She does have a good relationship with her brother, but even her brother is starting to grow older and kind of venture out on his own and kind of starting to leave the house and getting into trouble. We watch Amiko go through these situations with her family, the loss of a little sibling because her mother has a miscarriage, the transformative years of her brother when he's kind of going through adolescence into teenhood and getting into trouble and not really being there for her anymore. And then her feeling kind of left alone when her mother just really struggles with deep, deep depression from this miscarriage. Her father is very disconnected and doesn't really know how to handle her. And her brother has kind of just like left her in this situation. So she seems very lonely and very unable to fully comprehend situations as they are happening. Like it kind of takes her a little bit of time to understand what has been going on. And you're probably like, wow, that is very heavy and very deep and very dark for a book that's like 130 pages. And it was. I just loved Amiko so much. She, again, because of her as a character, she was just so pure and so genuine. And like seeing these situations through her eyes was just very eye-opening. and you felt connected to her in a way where you just like wanted to like reach out and grab her and like tell her she's okay and hug her and like make her feel safe and seen, because that's kind of what she ends up missing in her whole life. She's just kind of like never fully like seen or heard by anybody, and it did leave me feeling very kind of heartbroken and very kind of sad. It ended in a way where she was good and she was happy and she was safe, but again, in a book this small, you wouldn't expect to just kind of like feel so much in such a short amount of time. But I finished this and I was like, I think I stared at the wall for like 10 minutes because it just felt very heavy. But I really, really enjoyed it. So if you really enjoy stories that are kind of emotional and reflective, especially about like human connection and family dynamics, this is a great book to pick up and read. Again, it's only like 120 or 130 pages, so it's not a super long time commitment. And also, I rated this 3 stars. I don't know if I said that. So not my favorite translated novel I've ever read, but I did really, really enjoy it. And again, it kind of stayed with me for a while once I was done. Well, there you have it. That was all of the books that I read in April. That was 8 books in total, and kind of a mixed bag in rating as well. So we had some really high ones. We had 5-star and 4.5-star, all the way down to 2.5-star. Again, some of these books I have read in my reading vlogs, and I will always link those down below. So if you want more in depth, or if you want to see my thoughts and feelings as I was going through the entire book, you can always go back and watch those videos as well. As always, if you liked this video, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button because it always helps a girl out. And if you want to make sure you don't miss any of my other upcoming videos, like my TBR videos or any of my vlogs that I do release on a weekly basis, go ahead and hit that subscribe button too. Also, let a girl know what you read in April. Was there anything good you think I should know about? Or have you read any of the books we talked about in today's video? Let me know your thoughts and opinions on those in a comment below as well. As always, it has been an absolute blast, and I can't wait to see you guys in the next one.